So our next keynote is introducing design for publications in schools. The keynote speakers are Professor Ravi Poovaiah and Professor Nanki Nath. So for Professor Ravi Poovaiah, actually no introduction is required, but just as a formality, I will still go ahead. So he is a emeritus professor and a senior faculty member at IDC School of Design. His research interests are visual language, information visualization, visual narratives, interactive devices, collaborative learning environments, design, play and learn environments for children. And recently, he has taken this very interesting and massive task on his head. He is now coordinating the implementation of design thinking and innovation in school curriculum in India. I think over past some 10 to 15 years, slowly he was taking steps, arranging these workshops. Like even when we were students, we have seen this, and I think now it has really created impact, and things are going well. So soon we will see the textbooks and curriculum with design as a subject in schools. So we have another speaker with Professor Poovaiah today, Professor Nanki Nath. Professor Nanki Nath is a faculty member at University School of Design and Innovation, New Delhi. She did her doctoral studies on shop science in India at IDC School of Design. And before that, she did her master's in communication design from NID Ahmedabad. Her interests are in field of visual language, signages, corporate identity, and publication design. So now, without spending any further time, let's hear what they have to say. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Prasad, so much. Okay. So, as you rightly said, it's a very dear subject. It has become a very dear subject because finally it's kind of taking shape. In fact, today happens to be the day they actually inaugurated the curriculum. There's a formal inauguration in Baroda. The CBSE has launched the books from class 6 to class 12. That's around 650 hours of design learning, so we are so happy. And this year, hopefully around 1,000 schools will try to implement it, and the numbers will go up as the time comes. Okay, so we have two parts to it. I'm going to give the overall intention of why we are doing it and how we are doing it, introducing design and innovation in schools. And particularly in class 11, there's a module on publication design, which we thought is very relevant to the typography day, conference, and it's meant for children. Okay, so Nanki will speak on that because she was very involved with writing the content for the publication design. Okay, so let me do the introduction to the design and innovation curriculum being introduced in the schools, and then Nanki will take over after that. Let me share the screen. So as Prasad rightly said, we've been trying to include the subject of design innovation in schools from a very long time back in 2010, and again later on in 2017. We did have conferences and we had discussions on how to do it. We even came out with a report on how to introduce this, submitted to the ministry, but it actually took till 2020 when the national education policy was introduced in 20. And very rightfully, they identified many things which are dear to design as that should be part of the curriculum, especially in the schools. Okay, and they identified design as one of the 21st century skills, along with creativity and critical thinking. So that, became very clear that, design at the root of all this, and it needs to be introduced. So the ministry actually set up a national curriculum development committee in 2021. And for the last almost, more than 1.5 years, we've been meeting every Friday morning religiously, and discussing and developing the content. So finally, the content for 6 to 12 standards have got done and it's getting implemented. To give you an overview of what we are trying to do, at the core of it is the design thinking and innovation, curriculum. We've decided that this curriculum will be done through task and not through a textbook. That's a big difference. There'll be exposure slides, which the teachers will use to, introduce a particular subject along with case studies and examples. And the design process is learned. Always the process is integral to the learning of design and innovation. And in the process, the students will pick up some tools which become useful. So even in fact, if they don't actually pursue design, but they pursue some other subject, the learnings from this will be really useful, especially if the students are going to, think out of the box and try to be creative and innovative. So how do we create the content? So we said, let's experts, contribute towards this content development, run it through the teachers for their feedback, and the teachers would give it as an exercise to students, get their feedback. And this kind of is an iterative loop. So that means that this content that we develop is not frozen in time, but it is being changed almost every year. So that means that it has to remain fresh, changeable, contextual. So that was the intention of it. At the other side of it, we have to train teachers, because finally it's the teacher who interacts with the students in trying to implement this program. So it needs that you need to train the teachers. It means that the way the teachers would learn about the subject is a little different. For that also, we needed to create a teacher's manual, which is a lot more detailed than the curriculum itself. And one thing very nice about design is that it's visible. And there's a lot of pride in that. And this aspect of being reflective, if you put an exhibition and people come and, give you feedback, it thinks you about what you've done. So that's a very, very important task, where you get a criticism, where you get a critique or, feedback on what you've done. Okay, so that's one part of it. And of course, if the work is good, they can turn it into portfolios, which will become very dear to many of the students. And the intention was that this content, which needed to be flexible, is best to be kept on an online platform. Okay, of course, if you want to print it, you can print it, or you can, look at it as PDFs, or, you can access it on any of these, computing devices. But if the school doesn't have any facilities, then the print books will be printed and supplied to them. So this is just an overview of what we are trying to do. And here you look at it, we've kind of mapped the design, thinking process to the way it should be done for the school. So you have the design process here. We have changed the terms to suit the student community, because the terms that we've used are very simple terms, observation, understanding and analysis, ideating and being creative, build and build mock-ups or prototypes, and then you reflect on what you've done. So that's the core of the design thinking process that's integrated into the design thinking innovation curriculum. And the outputs are that you have an introduction and FAQs. More than the students, it's meant for the parents, because they need to be convinced to why the children are doing a subject called as design and its implications. So we need to create the bigger picture of it. And the content is learned through exposure sessions, as I mentioned. And the whole thing will be a task book along with assessment and feedback. And we also have the teacher's manual. So these are the a point of contact for both the students as well as the teachers and the parents, and they turn it into modules. Okay, so we'll go to it. So even the design thinking process itself, we debated a lot and made terms which are very friendly for the students. So it's observation, understanding, ideating, build and do and reflect. Okay, so this is the design process. Okay, and then it was very important that the way design is learned is a little bit different from the way any other subject is learned in the school. In the school, it's not really a two-way interaction. It's more of a one-way interaction. So we needed to change this. So one is that it's very experiential. They have to do things and learn. Okay, and usually design is very playful, joyful experiences, both for the teacher as well as the students. And whenever you have to solve a problem, there is an involvement which is part and parcel of it. And the students get to work together, collaborate, debate, discuss, cooperate, and solve problems. And the classrooms need to become studios. It is a very important criteria because it's a place we can dirty up, but they'll clean in the evening, where, they should be able to turn around their, tables to make it join together. Okay. And exposures instead of textbooks. Okay. And if you take up problems, it has to be very local, contextual problems in their own languages, if possible. Okay, and basically it's to do with exploration, experimentation, looking at options. Okay, so there are multiple solutions to a given problem. There's no one single solution to anything. And this is also a very important thing. The school, because of the system, has this 40 minutes or 45-minute periods. So we said that's too short a period. So we've requested them to combine at least 3 of them. So it becomes a 2-hour module. So this is roughly how it could be. We also laid out a, sequence in which we would actually develop the content for it with the lesson plan steps, with putting the vision first. Then what are the competencies the students will learn through this module, learning aims, objectives, also mapping it with the sustainability development goals. Okay, and that becomes modules and sub-modules, and we develop the exposure, content, tasks, and the references, and also build the assessment criteria with the feedback. At the same time, do the teacher's manual, and the whole work can result in exhibition portfolios, and it becomes a place for validation. And the nice part is that some of it can become documented online, which becomes very, very useful for the next task. So fortunately, we are, collaborating and with a new cell at the ministry called the Innovation Cell. So they're actually very, keen on implementing it in the schools. So they would provide many of the backend services as well as training of the teachers. Okay. One thing we were very important is that we needed to have a broader vision of what we're trying to do. So one of the first things is that the problems are centered around, starting from yourself going outwards, so local to global. Okay, even here, it might start with your own problems, then family, society, community, and the humanity itself. So when they go from 6 to 12 standard, it could be personal to humanity, so there's a growth in that sense. We also want to shift the focus from human beings to all, respect for all life on earth. The last 3 centuries or more have been very, very human centric. Yeah, so that needs to change. Same thing. We have made the world into a very unsustainable world. So the concept of sustainability has to be integrated into the program itself. So intention, for example, they'll always use reusable materials into doing anything. That's one of the intentions here. Of course, the design thinking process is going to get integrated. And what is not so much known in the Indian context is that there's a very big option of being part of the creative industries. Okay, for some reason, it's not in the middle class, mindset. So that's something we need to do that. Saying that that's a very nice and interesting industry. And if somebody learns design in the school and wants to go that way, that's another path one can take. So this is roughly the curriculum. In the class 6, 7, 8, it's an exposure module with about 18 hours of exposure. But in 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th, it becomes 160 hours, almost as equivalent to any other subject. And this is initially offered as a skill subject. Okay, and after some time, it might become integrated into a major subject itself. Okay, so we've set the overall vision, then laid down the competencies and mapped with some of the SDG goals. Just to, so for example, competencies could be observation skills, developing their communication skills, being sensitive to design and the environment. They should be able to identify problems and analyze it. They should be able to explore creative options and then solve these problems and maybe prototype and build objects, you know. So if you look at roughly from class 6 to class 12, it kind of grows in complexity. First 3 years are just exposures to design skills, sensitivity, and the introduction to the design thinking process itself. Then it goes into skills and sensitivity a little more deeper. They start solving simple problems, finding solutions to it. 10th standard is focused on creativity, prototyping, problem solving, slightly larger issues. 11th standard, they get into different branches of design. Okay, that's where the publication design gets implemented. They do a communication design problem. Okay, and problems become a little more complex, and even how to start a enterprise or a startup itself is even taught out there. And the 12th standard is basically about applications at different levels. So for example, you take a design problem, you solve it as a personal space problem, you look at it from a social point of view, so you do that, and you look at it from a public space point of view. So the complexity of the problem itself is slightly enlarged from one stage to another. And it ends with a semester long, project one project. We're calling it the capstone project, which the students can do together in groups of 3 even. So roughly this is the, that's the, overall scheme of it. Now I'm going to a bit of the details. Okay, so if you look at 6th, 7th, 8th, the first one, if you take it, it's actually fundamentals of design as well as story creation. The task given is very simple. They're given elements of design, okay, and with these elements of design, they have to make a puppet. And after they get the puppet, they have to create a story and enact this puppet like a play in the class. It's done by groups of 3 to 5 students. So that's the first class, right? And in the evening, when they go home, they have a task of creating an imaginary character, which they have to create from their imagination. So that's like, first module. Second module, for example, we're introducing form transition, maybe from a caterpillar to a butterfly, or from a dog to a cat, using clay or again paper cutouts. They do it, take multiple photographs and try to play it together. It's the start of the animation project for them. In the evening, as a home exercise, they have to actually identify shapes and forms in nature and in the neighborhood. Okay, third module is about products. Okay, so we've given here, for example, problem from the physics, the sundials. So they have to learn about how sundials can actually, with shadows and the sun can actually tell the time of the day. But we've kind of tweaked the problem to do a portable sundial, which they can put it on their hands or as an umbrella, and it should tell the time of the day. Okay, and they do this exercise by idea sketching and then, debating about it. And the last part of it, for example, in the class, is that they do a design project. They have to identify problems around their school, okay, or inside the school, analyze it, think of ideas, sketch it out, and at the end of it, make a presentation. Okay, so this is very simple at the class 6 level. Class 7 also has similar content, but for example, the problem here, instead of being inside the school, they go outside the school into the street, the bus stops, the fruit vendor or the small shops on the footpath. Okay, in the class 8, it becomes a little longer into a public facility, maybe a marketplace or a railway station or a bus station. Look around and find issues and try to find solutions to that. So this is how the complexity is. So if you look at 9th and 10th, And just telling you, so we wanted to introduce, observation as a key element. For that, they have to document through photography, introduction of, fundamentals of 2D here, okay, which Prasad has helped us out. Okay, and then you come into the first stage of the design process, that is observation and trying to find a problem. They do a project there. In the next semester, you use sketching for ideation and introduction to fundamentals of 3D, followed by the second stage of the design process, that's the analysis of a problem, and they do a project out there. And in the 10th standard, they start with design for moving images, the fundamentals of animation, fundamentals of story creation, where they actually go through the whole story creation process and they try to create a story. Same with creativity, introduction of creativity here. And then they do a creative design project, which involves all the three. And in the next semester, fundamentals of communication, introduction of sustainability and design, prototyping techniques, and then they do a project with a prototype involved in that. So this is roughly the 9th and 10th. When it comes to 11th, they get into areas of design or fields of design. So publication design is introduced, moving images, they make a video film here, information design is introduced. These are all just introductions. They're not, it's about 18 hours. It's not that much of time. So you can just touch and make them aware of it. Then they end up as a communication design project here. In the next semester, it's about fundamentals of, 3D product design, then digital design, game and toy design, and they end up with a collaborative project at the end of the semester. When they come to 12th, which is the last year in school, they do the personal problem, home space or space for social design, and get into public spaces. Okay, and then we also introduce a very nice subject here, the Indian knowledge systems, the fundamentals of it. For example, the concept of abstraction, the concept of grid, patterns, which are very, very nicely defined in the Indian knowledge system. So again, introduction to it so that we create interest in our own, philosophies and systems, and then ends up with the final project. So this isn't just the curriculum that we've introduced. Okay. And if you just look at the kind of problems they do, first problem around the school environment. The 9th grade, they actually investigate how waste is generated in the school and redesign the objects or artifacts in the primary classroom. 10th grade, they explore public concerns or explorations, then a project on sustainability. Then 11th, they take up communication design project, and then product design in the second semester. As I said, personal space, social space, public space, and Indian knowledge systems in 12th grade, followed by a capstone project. Okay, so it was very important that we also change the grading system. Okay, so we didn't want anybody to feel bad. There's no failures. So the lowest grade one can get is saying a beginner, developing, promising, proficient, excellent, and outstanding. So this is how the grading they'll get at the end of the course or the end of the year, which will come into the mark sheets. So it's always been trying to encourage it. Even we've thought of a assessment rubrics for the teachers as well as the students, so they know that on which criteria they get the grade. If they fill all the 5 criteria, they get an excellent. But if they just satisfy a couple of criteria, is still at the beginning. This becomes a reference. And we've also done self-assessment as well as the final assessment from the teachers. I'm not going to go through this, but we've asked a lot of questions here. How do we convince the parents? How do we make sure we get a new task every year? How do we make the curriculum suited for disinterested teachers? Coaching classes. So we are still trying to find answers to it, but I think we'll do that. So that's kind of in a nutshell introducing the design thinking and innovation curriculum. Okay, so I'm going to, pass it on to Nanki to do the rest of it. Nanki, just tell me when to press the next button.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Over to
So
you.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, sir. So I would like to share with the audience the modules on publication design. So as part of the team and how sir has already shared, there are different modules in Standard 11. And in Standard 11, we have, other than moving images and information design, one major module of fundamentals of publication design. So publication design, like when the team was developing the content in form of exposures and the tasks that you see on the screen, this is how they are laid out in the task book. But then the approach was in order to augment school students, somewhere help them understand the design skills as well as the design sensitivity, and help them understand that these are the competencies that perhaps would come in the entire learning, be it from the exposure content as well as the tasks that they will do. Now, this module is a total of 18 hours with 12 hours at school as well as 6 hours scheduled at home. So how it all begins when the teacher starts teaching is that she will give the exposure content in form of the PPTs that have been prepared. So we have prepared contents on basics like layouts, compositions, and hierarchy of information. The linear model of communication that involves message, channel, code, and context, and how it has been laid out in the exposure. Just to share, we have taken simple examples like a simple movie poster and a regular Bollywood movie poster that a child must have seen and has a children's theme, has been sort of decoded in the exposure content, and the teacher would go step by step, and then after that we have an array of these tasks. So in the tasks, as you see, tasks are numbered. It's also written how much time at school and home the task would be taking. And we begin with the first task of elements of composition and publication design. A lot of briefs are already part of these tasks, so I'm not highlighting on every elaboration of the task, but maybe one of the tasks I'll take forward. So like the first task was identification of the compositions on a page. They were already taught. And how will they take a simple newspaper or a magazine layout and sort of relook at the redesign the publication? That was another task. So how in the textbook, it all starts with an introduction of what publication design is. Teachers will get to know what the students will learn, and also the content part, like it will involve exposures on layouts and composition, because it involves layout and composition knowledge, format, size, that have also become slides of the exposure content. Students will learn basics of communication methods. That's why the communication model, and then how in the third exposure will apply it into a communication design problem. Aim of the module overall was really not to make them, they won't become publication designers, but yes, can we arouse an interest in the field? Can they be intrigued by it? They will ask questions around it. What new kind of publications they can get into, and maybe some of them are interested and they would like to take that forward as a profession. Also in the task book, so this is the hierarchy which is there on the slide. So place details have been mentioned, that again at home and school scenario, how much time and the frequency of the task would be repeated. In groups of how many, like 3 students at home and 4 students together at the school, and then one student at home would sort of exchange the idea and process it out, and the task would be complete. And again, for the teacher's benefit, because things are given at a macro level in the descriptions, but also at a micro level, that how much time perhaps they can keep in their mind. So like all the exposures could be 20 minutes. Let's not drag it so much so that there's less time for children at home as well as part of the class to do the tasks and apply it. And 200 plus minutes divided as per the task. So like task of composition and elements has been thought of with 255 minutes, and that much energy, degree, and time. And similarly for the media task analysis and how to create a poster design as part of the publication task. So as already shared, definitely sustainable design goals, including them would help children in school start at a very early age to realize that there are these issues, And why not bring it into the thinking? Not only the exposures will inspire them, but also somewhere the briefs of the tasks will also sort of give them ideas and let them move forward. So they can pick up from any of the SDGs that were shared. Also, any of these. So some tasks are involving 4 hours at home, some are involving and the same 2 hours of sort of exchange and finalizing things. And why I've included that visual as part of the exposures, we have really shown students a lot of everyday examples, like the Indian examples of publications, newspapers, magazines, books, comics books, and also there are inbuilt activities within the exposures in which they will actually detail out those grids, those basic grids, and understand it simply in the class as part of the exposure and then taken to the task. And I have detailed out one more task here, which is I'm including the brief how it's there in our task book. So students are asked in the later task to compose a message for a social awareness campaign on the use of green energy, or say sustainable practices like can they find something at their home and think of recycling altogether through publication design. And what do they need to do? They need to choose any of the two given channels, be it news magazine along with a cartoon, club both of them and sort of create a publication design solution. Or it could be a comic strip or a poster for, say, comic strip visual style and a poster for a school notice board. Why not? So there will also come not only the sensitivity, but the skill of creativity and how they are visualizing that. And they need to apply from the exposures that they have learned what is the communication design problem. So they'll first identify the issue in the groups regarding this task. They will read about the issue, discuss it with their peers, friends, and family, take it forward. They will note different points of views and select one and work on that one subject at home as well as school space. Choosing the channel and conveying the message, sketching and detailing the iterative process, how we do it in design. But then when teacher is delivering all that, it's laid out in a simple language. They'll take that forward, and what would be the output would be either an image-based or a mixture of both, and with those two channels and the presentation of that in simple 6 to 7 slides. So one more sort of task to share here, which is like a kind of major project in the fundamentals of publication design, which we thought, which will give students some basic level opportunity to visualize a book and a storybook for themselves and friends of their age. So why not design a storybook for the children? And what would be the themes? So simple themes like traffic rules and road crossing, they see every day while they come to school and go back. Elements from nature, which is just around us, and we observe them at everyday basis, or on a social issue, which is dear to their heart. Even at a child's level and age, we often see that, children express their views on social happenings or events, and now can that be utilized for the task and learning publication design. So again, following the details of the process, but here majority of the design problem process has been laid out. But the interesting part in this particular storybook exercise is that why not also give them an opportunity to write an interesting short story and then take it, apply the design thinking process and execute it as a publication. So they need to write 300 words, express themselves freely on paper, take that concept note forward, plan the visuals appropriately using a certain grid and with their grid knowledge from exposures, detail out sketches, also involve some interesting illustrations, open themselves up, think a little out of the box, apply these principles and compose the layout of their book. Now that book could be either of the three themes as we have just seen. And then they will not talk in those jargons or those typical publication design terms, but yes, still they should have a fair idea of what a left, center, right alignment is. And as teacher has taught, perhaps that will also come in their presentation, and that would be expected while they are presenting it as part of class presentations. As sir has already laid out the structure, so in the structure, there is an opportunity for them to reflect upon and share answers to these questions. Teacher will also ponder along with them to these questions, that how many of them would be like to be a part of a design team at school for a news magazine, say a news magazine kind of project, or illustrate and design books for children. Can they pursue this as a creative field, and do they wish to become a graphic designer? Would they like to be part of a publishing industry? Or maybe some of them might also think of a career, like how we have seen Aditi's work here and how she has taken the whole journey forward. Is it inspiring them towards larger purpose in life and carve out a profession for themselves? Self-assessment criteria is a Likert scale, so it's from the beginning till the excellent, and both the teachers and the students can self-assess themselves. Resources and references will help them understand publication design and retain the knowledge and apply it forward. So likewise, we have a follow-up module. What does it mean? That after the basic and the fundamental module of publication design, knowing the elements, how they are applied, how the communication model is applied, but that was applied to very specific tasks. Now, how to apply it to larger, somewhere what we call as wicked problems in design, or larger social issues around us. But then, can a bigger project be looked at from the same lens of what all those learnings have been? So the exposures in the design project module of communication design collaborative project involves design thinking process, as already shared, and how that can be used to make a process time journey map. Detailings of that have been done in exposures for teachers. They will deliver that. They will take a feedback from students and then apply it in the project. And then perhaps a case study that he or she would be taking forward in class, along with the workbook and the exposures, and try to detail out tasks for them. So in similar manner, all the tasks for this module have also been laid out. And I think we can move ahead, and let me go to the main slide, in which introducing them, to one of the major tasks in which you have to, like what they are expected to do is to choose one of the SDG major goals, 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, and 12, these options, and somewhere utilize it on some idea of how can their creation in the design project using the design thinking project will help out for that issue. So the final solutions could be a poster campaign to create awareness, an illustrated storybook or a short video, a simple card or a board game, information design for SDGs, utilizing that, and an animated short clip. I would just like to add here, like this workbook of ours of Standard 11, this has different modules. So there are also modules on information design and moving images. Even learnings from those are also coming as part of the task in this particular module. So like we have this interesting one task of analyzing a problem, and then you can even teach in a very basic level to students how to do an information analysis by categorizing and then dividing that in a simple tabular form, and that becomes the output. So ideation, like one of the tasks to detail out, which is an interesting aspect of the project, would be like when they have all their primary and secondary research done, how will they ideate on creative design solution possibilities? So somewhere, as Sir was saying, see, these are not classrooms, these are studio environments. So let's also make through tasks and the content, let the child understand that this is more of a studio rather than a classroom. Can we at least bring that at a beginning stage for the child? So the group will brainstorm, they will create creative solutions. Post-its will be used, some sort of a format would be given to that ideation and then mapped out. And as they collate their ideas, the final project would be presented in 3 slides with sketches, matrix, and the shortlisted outcomes. So similarly, we also, as teachers and students, they have some questions to ponder, and they will also follow the self-assessment Likert scale. Yeah.
We can kind of end, there are various ways that you can support us, be part of the review team or part of the content team, or try out the task with students and give us feedback. So be an ambassador to, to tell parents that this is a good thing to do. Yeah, that's roughly it. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you. So it was really wonderful to see all these efforts, how things are shaping up. And I think this is we are as a education system, I think it's a new turn. So let's see how it work out. So let's open it up for the questions. Please raise your hand if you have any question. Okay, so before people come up with a question, I just wanted to ask one thing. Maybe it's little early to ask this, but just I'm curious because this whole design and creativity, these subjects we are introducing, and as you mentioned, it has a very, I mean, the main pillar or the foundation is a visual as a sense. So considering this inclusivity, what will happen in case of visually impaired students? Will there be any parallel things worked out for them, or how will it be?
See, this is there are roughly around, I think, 10 subjects which are offered like electives. Okay,
Right.
so design is one of them. Okay, so
Okay.
I think we've really not addressed this question even at the master's level or at the
Right.
graduate level. Okay, so I think
Right.
we've not done that, but I think there is an intention to include the other categories of children with disabilities. I think the visual disabilities is a little tough to address
Right.
because this is a visual medium.
Right.
But any other kind of disabilities, they have to be inclusive in this.
Okay.
So that's what we've decided. It's written in the FAQ books.
Okay.
We've specifically mentioned this exactly.
Right.
You're
Right.
talking, Prasad. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. So we have one question, Devan, from Devan Das.
Yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for this outline. I think it's the need of the hour, and thank you, Dr. Nanki and Ravi sir. So, just quickly to give you a quick background, I'm doing a PhD proposal around the same kind of aspiration. So. My main concern while I was addressing this topic of introducing design in education as an intervention for design, I mean, Indian students, especially till K-12, is that now in rural India, we have a vast and, varied ethnic diversity. Like, for example, a boy from Kerala would have a reference of playing with, certain material, creating things with material, a boy or a girl. A child from the Northeast would similarly have a familiarity with material and colors and textures anywhere in India, as diverse as we are. So if my subject of study was also whether there is any provision in curriculum design to accommodate this kind of diversity, and that was something I would just like to know your thoughts upon as well.
Yeah, actually, I've included it in one of the concept slides where we say that the problems have to be contextual. So the teachers, see, we've given the flexibility to see, nothing of this task is written in stone. Okay, the teachers can, in fact, they're given a Word file of this. Okay, the slides are both PDF and PowerPoint. Okay, so the intention is that they can modify it to suit their own local idioms. Even we've said that even the task, for example, they can contextualize it. So this is something which we've taken it and which we are telling the teachers. So the teachers have become very enthusiastic. Till now, they were not allowed to change some of the content, right? So they can change it to a certain extent. This is how we are planning to do the local context. Okay. The same thing we have to realize right now, access to technology may not be around. Okay. So most of the content for the book can be done without access to any technology, So in fact, if there's no internet, we've said that CBSE has said that they're going to print the books and supply to these schools, But we've made sure that most of the content, we said problems around your school, around the outside environment, in your neighborhood. It's always like that. There's no problem which is alien to them, which is given in all the class 12 areas. Even, for example, personal problems is we ask them mostly to identify problems in their own house, in their own neighborhood. So it kind of answers your question, right? Yeah. So if you go through each of the tasks, we made sure that, what you're exactly saying, because of the diversity of our country, we need to take this into consideration. Absolutely. Yeah.
So is it okay if I quickly
Yeah.
ask, leading from that? So now, so when we are involved with government agencies, I mean, not mentioning any particular organizations, but I recently had an experience where I was working with some government implementation of curriculum for diploma programs in NCR. But so the limitation now that we have developed a curriculum which accommodates a lot of things and has a certain aspiration. Many times we experience that the teachers are not trained to some extent. They do not come, in many instances, from a design background. So I see this as a great opportunity if it's a policy-based question, I guess. But if the faculty for these programs are also trained, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so we've kind of looked at this limitation because it's not going to be designers who are going to be teaching this. Definitely not for the next 10 or 15 years, So it has to be the present teachers who are kind of trained to teach this. There could be limitations, but in the long run, at least the first experience that we had is really very enthusiastic, So what we did was we did it in a, tier manner. Okay, we offered a program on design, innovation, and thinking, and I know it was an online course. You won't believe it, 70,000 teachers opted to take this course. Okay, it was around, the total duration was around 50 hours of it. They had to go through it, and they were given some questions at the end of it. So if they got, I think, around 60% of the marks, they were made into school innovation ambassadors. There was also a module on innovation and prototyping, and also, copywriting and things like that as added things. So it was actually 75 hours of this program. Okay. So you won't believe it. Now there are roughly around, I think, 18,000 of them who have cleared this program, and they're all called as school innovation ambassadors, and they're the ones who are going to implement it. They're very enthusiastic about it. There are two folds to this. Okay, one is that it's introduced as a separate subject, but the broader intention is to take the fundamentals of the design, especially the way design is introduced as a problem solving activity, and integrate it even with other subjects like physics or learning of English or history. So that's the other intention of it, So the schools are getting geared up to this. It will take time. Okay, but there's a lot of enthusiasm for doing this. Okay, and partly also is the NEP 2020, which has kind of outlined the similar kind of aims, So it's going to take time to train this, but it will happen and not happen at the same time. Okay, we'll have to wait and see, but at least right now the enthusiasm levels are very high. So that's what it is. In fact, we've already conducted around 6 workshops in different parts of the countries, where around close to 60 to 80, teachers and principals came together. So we had workshops there, a couple of days workshops to make them go through the whole process, and they are training other teachers in that, so it has a multiplier effect. This year, we're expecting around 1,000 schools to introduce design. So let's see, I'm also have to wait and see, because this is in fact the first experiment in the world itself. No other country has actually done it. And India, if it really does it, it can do it in scale, So yeah, so that's something which we have to keep our fingers crossed and hope it works. And we've kind of said that, we'll support them as much as possible, right? Yeah. Because design is very dear to us, and if it can reach the children, nothing like it, and if it can change the learning methods, right? And that will be a big plus point. And if, somehow their creativity and talent is upheld, in those younger days. And I think it will make a big difference in the times to come.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. I think because we were all those children at some point of time.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
all of us had the same, when we are saying that hope we had this when we were kids, right? Yeah, so that's
Right.
Actually, I'll just add in a line to what sir said. So when I was working for this and in the exposure especially, I really wanted to become younger, sir, and go to that stage of the child when I was in school and sort of replay and do this curriculum that wish I had designed at school level. Yeah.
Okay.
so. No, I'm just adding on to this. See, what has happened is that somehow, especially in the ministry and in the, NCRT and the CBSE circles, they've realized that design, the way design has been taught, right, has a lot of takeaways even for very young children. Okay, so now we're actually looking at how we can introduce it from class, age 3 onwards, pre-primary itself, not as a subject of design, but the principles of design, where, even if you take a story, for example, okay, how can you ask the children to create things with multiple endings, maybe create a dress for a story or play and act a story. So the design elements comes into that, and they get, for example, evaluated. People will criticize the story or pass comments on it, so they discuss about the story. So the features of the, design process is kind of integrated into the curriculum. This is just a thought, but we are actually at that stage to see if we can make the learnings even at this stage much more richer,
Yeah. So it's really wonderful to actually witness all these things happening. And I think just because of time, we have to stop
sure.
here. But all of you already know how to reach Professor Ravi, Professor Nanki, and anybody who wants to contribute in these efforts. You can definitely write to them, and you will get to know how and in what way you can contribute to this path. So let's end our session here because we are already 7 minutes past the time. So I'll just hand it over to our coordinator or volunteer.
Volunteer, I think. Radhika was there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
Radhika.
I'll conclude the session. Thank you all the panel members, and thank you, Professor Prasad, for chairing this session.